Okay. For some reason it's not coming up. Just check if the embed's right. Okay, so supposedly we're live, but for some reason it's not coming up on the page. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. So somebody says they can hear me. Okay, so we are live. Okay, we're up.
Excellent.
We're up. Okay, sorry about that, guys. The joys of Google. Okay, so we're a couple of minutes late. I apologize about that. So okay, so I'm not quite sure who or what you can actually see at the moment, but it's the first time doing a live hangout. But here we are anyway. So welcome to the webinar. This is the 5 biggest mistakes you're making with your proposals and how to fix them. But before we jump in, I'd like to introduce my co-host for today, who's Curtis McHale. And Curtis has over a decade of experience as a consultant, working with a background in development, but he's also the author of writing proposals that win work. So how are you doing, Curtis?
I'm very good. How are you today?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Glad that we're finally on the air now. So good, excited to jump in. So okay, so I guess I better introduce myself quickly for those who don't know. My name's Nathan Powell, and I'm the founder of Nusi. And Nusi is online proposal software aiming to simplify the proposal process for small businesses. And basically, over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to try and cover 5 of the biggest mistakes that we're making in our proposals on a pretty regular basis. So we're going to be covering what happens when we rush into a proposal. We're going to be covering what happens when we don't get the budget up front, when we fail to set goals to measure the success of a project, overcomplicating our proposals, and not tying value to a given cost or to our proposal pricing. After that, we'll spill the beans on a great little offer we put together for you between ourselves and Curtis. And then after that, we can jump into some questions if anyone has any questions at all. So let's jump in on the first item on the list, which is rushing into a proposal. And I know I've been guilty of this myself. I know very few people who haven't been guilty of this. So why do you think, Curtis, that so many of us do jump in, without sort of taking the correct measures, shall we say?
I think most of it comes down to fear, right? You get afraid that you're never going to see another client again. And when the client says, I need to send me this proposal, how fast can you get it to me? And you say, well, I can absolutely get it to you in the next 20 minutes. But often you realize even through that process, you haven't answered all the questions you really need, but you just push it out anyways because you said that. But it all comes down to fear or imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it, right? Someone's going to discover I can't do this, and then no client will ever talk to me again. This is my last chance to ever have a successful business.
Sure, that tends to happen a lot, doesn't it? If I don't get the proposal out the door today, I will never see another client again.
And I think that there needs to be a really long lead time until you get up to ready to write it. So what I'll often do is it'll take me weeks to get up to that point where I'm really ready to write it. And then in that time, when I feel ready because I've answered the questions I need, then I can turn it around in an hour or two. It's easy. But most people don't take all that time up front and they rush through. They have 1 5-minute meeting and they think, yeah, we totally understand this. We'll get the proposal out today. And you typically don't. We totally understand it.
Mm-hmm. So what, obviously the process needs to be slowed down. And I think a lot of the times when we do have that tendency to get that proposal out of the door by the end of the day or by the next morning at the very latest, I think oftentimes we feel that we're pushed into that by our clients. Sometimes that is the case, but oftentimes it isn't at all. And I think the times that it is the case that a client is in a rush, we need to get a cost. We need to. I sometimes wonder if they're even the right sort of person to be talking to in the first place. Is that the kind of person we want to be working with?
Absolutely. I actually just only do proposals 1 day a week. And so if the client says, I want this tomorrow, and if it's not my proposal day the next day, I say no. If my slot's already filled up, I say, I'm sorry, I already have proposals to write for tomorrow. I can do it next week at this time. That's the only next time. That's when I will start it. I may have more questions once I start it. There's no guarantee you get it at the end of that day. That's
Sure.
what I do. And that's part of the process that helps me slow it down, right? Same way I only take calls on Tuesdays, and clients say, well, there's not a call for 3 weeks. Well, that's because I'm busy. Sorry. That's all part of slowing the process down. And I just don't allow myself to rush through them, right? By setting out, I only do it on this day. I only take calls with clients 1 day. I only do proposals on 1 day of the week. And I only do I only do 1. So the maximum output of my proposals per week is 1.
All right. Okay. And so for example, that client that might come along and might be expecting that proposal on the very same day. So they might not be the ideal client, because if they're asking for a proposal on the same day, then they're expecting some kind of commodity price. We charge X for this, and that's a done deal. Whereas there's no process involved. There's no, well, actually tell me what your problem is. What do you need?
And they're not letting you take the time to build up trust with each other, right?
Yeah. I mean, how do you get that process
at all?
How do you kick off that whole process of, well, actually, let's sort of get to know each other, and let me find out how or if I can even help you.
Yeah. So mine starts off with my initial email, which has, I think, 9 questions now. A lot of them around, why are we doing this? Why is this the right thing now? Why aren't we doing something else? What other projects could be more important? What's your time frame and what's your budget? And unless I have all those questions answered to my satisfaction, I do not get on the phone. And even when I have clients push back and say, well, I don't know the budget. How much will this cost? And so I may ask, okay, well, what's your range? Is 5,000 too much? Is 10,000 too much? Is 20,000 too much? And at some point they say, oh, that's way too expensive. I've cost that much. No way. And that's where the value has flipped in their mind, right? There's no longer return on value or return on investment. So that's I do not get on the phone, except with some long-term clients, maybe, right? I might get on the phone. They say I have a new project, and we just jump right into talking because I've worked with them a few times. But anybody new has to answer that. And if they don't want to, then I don't work with them.
So if there's any pushback of any kind on those initial questions or those initial discussions, there's no sort of room to maneuver?
Well, it depends. And some of them, they may say, I just don't know why. I don't know an answer to this question. I just don't have it. Right? Then that's fine. But if they say, well, if there's no time frame and there's no budget and there's no nothing, then that's probably a fishing expedition, and to see how much something might cost. And if it maybe is possibly the right price, then we might maybe do it sometime in the next 6 months, which is a waste of my time.
Yeah. And I think when you do rush into that proposal as well, it is a shot in the dark, because you don't know, it's impossible to know enough about the project and the needs of that client. Going from perhaps an email in the morning, even if they were to answer those questions, prior to any conversation, prior to any digging, how much can you know about somebody's business from one day to the next? And
I think developers, designers, creative people don't view themselves as professionals in many respects. You don't go to the doctor and say, hey, my knee hurts, give me this medication. The doctor doesn't say, sure, and write you a prescription. The doctor asks you a whole bunch more questions, and they diagnose, right?
And we usually don't have a problem in answering those questions.
That's right. And if they didn't, that would be considered malpractice. So if you're not willing to dig in with your clients, that is malpractice on your part. That's that is the most valuable part of your service. The actual typing out the code or the design, other stuff, is not as valuable as the analysis. It's like a U-shaped curve, right? It's the beginning that's most valuable, down to, almost anyone can push around Photoshop to greatly simplify it. Almost anyone can do that, but it's that analysis up front, all that. How is this going to affect your branding? What type of brand do you want? All those things up front that get into the Photoshop, that get into, again, value at the end again.
And I think that as well is a big differentiator between sort of a technician and a consultant, no, or a set of hands in a business.
That's right, and that's strategic and tactical, right? The technician is thinking tactical. We do A, B, C, like all these little tasks. That's it. And the consultant is stepping back and looking at the strategic importance of this business. Mm-hmm. And the more you step back, the more you'll be able to charge. But again, the more your budgets go higher, the more time you need to invest up front before you could even put out a proposal.
Sure. Okay. So you mentioned briefly there about sort of the budget thing. And again, this is something I've been guilty of, and not on one occasion, but on several occasions, is not getting the budget up front. And obviously you're just asking for problems, because inevitably you are playing a numbers game, and you are just, you know what you're willing to work for, but you have no idea what your potential customer or client is willing to invest. So I mean, how can we get past that sort of fear, I guess, right? We usually don't ask, usually because we're scared.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. So something I do kind of on the side for people is I teach a course on financial management. And so I am, like, when we do this course, I bring in my actual budget book that my wife writes out, because she's the better budgeter than I am. And we write it out, we bring it in and have people look through it. They could tell what we pay ourselves every month and what we pay for everything. So we are very free with our income and talking about money, but most people are not, which is unfortunate, because then you get this, hey, they own a new car, and then, but they may have payments on it. So it's not, they don't really own it. They just have a piece of paper that says they're allowed to drive it. And that even comes back to budgets. You get scared of asking because you're scared of what the customer will say. And so I approach it. My first question is I ask outright, hey, what's your budget? If they say they don't know, that's when I may go to ranges, right? Are you, just stop me when it sounds expensive. If the project costs $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000, and you can pick whatever increment you want to go up. I usually pick 5,000 because that seems like a good number to me. And at some point they say, whoa, yeah, if it was that much, we wouldn't even do it. We wouldn't even think about it. So that's where, so if they say 20, so it needs to be somewhere under $20,000 at its maximum at this point, because that's where they're just not even going to look at the project. And I have very rarely had a client on the phone who won't say, who won't go through that process. If they don't, then I just don't work. I say, hey, if you can't tell me the budget, then we're obviously not starting with trust, and I'm not going to send you a proposal.
Sure. And I think, any potential client who's not willing to discuss the topic of budget, I understand that, a lot of clients don't know how much something should cost, especially if they, it's something they're doing for the first time. It's not on them to know how much something should or could cost, but at the same time, they need to have an idea what they're willing to invest, because obviously, again, this is a matter of digging, isn't it? I think because you need to discover as well almost what the return on investment could be, because obviously if they're only going to make, say, 20,000 over the next 12 months on the project that you could be helping them with, and obviously you're going to charge them 25,000, 30,000, then the return on investment isn't there. And again, I think it comes into taking a step back and sort of digging in behind.
And in that case, I tell clients, why would you even do this? I even did some discovery work for a client. I'd done a few of them, and then we looked at the next phase, and I said, well, how much have you invested in this already? Because I was coming behind someone else to clean up some work, and they told me the number, and I was like, that's crazy. Why would you even do this? You're not going to pay that off for like 12 years. That's stupid. And they're like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. So,
and which way did they go with that? Did they look for other options past that point, or?
No, they decided that the frustrations they had with their current tool weren't worth 12 times their annual income. So they will live with it, or they could hire out the work for a small fraction of what it would take to fix the work they already had done. And so they were falling into the sunk cost fallacy, right? We've already spent some money on it, so we might as well just throw good money after bad money.
Sure.
is what they were kept doing. And me saying I would never do this if it was my business. It sounds dumb to me, is the actual words I used. They were like, oh, but okay, someone else gave us a quote for that. Well, that's stupid. I'm not even going to send you one because it's a waste of your time.
Oh, well, there you go then.
It's going to cost at least, it's going to cost you at least $10,000. You're not going to pay that off for like 10 years. That sounds like a dumb idea to me.
And I think that's as much as part of our job as it is saying, it's going to cost you X amount, because if the client isn't going to benefit, then at some point in time, it's going to reflect badly on you as well, because you haven't helped that business.
Well, they're going to come back and they're going to look at it as a failed project, right? Even if you met every qualification, you delivered it on time, it was exactly what they wanted, they'll look at it and say, this is a failed project for my business that did not yield a return on investment.
Sure. Okay. So if we go from the budget, and this, it kind of ties into what we were just saying, and something that's very often overlooked when we are sort of in the proposal stage is actually knowing whether that project is going to work out or not. And in the case of this client, you said, there isn't going to be no benefit whatsoever to you continuing with this. So very often, in fact, it's one of the biggest failings I see is not setting those sort of goalposts, those sort of measuring the success of a project. A lot of people talk about it, but very few people actually put those goals in place, because, if you can't see the return on investment, or rather, if you don't know what that return on investment is, or if you don't know how, well, okay, with this project, we need to be gathering X number of sales leads a month, or we need to be getting X number of, signups or whatever it is. Why do you think that we sort of so badly, we deal with this part of the proposal so badly, we fail to set up any goals?
And that means we're actually accountable for it, right? It is.
Sure.
People very often don't want to be accountable for anything. They want to say, well, I did A, B, and C, so we're done, as opposed to if A, B, and C didn't yield the result the client wanted, again, it's a failed project like we just said. You do need to be careful in that, though, because you can't guarantee that they're going to get sales leads, right? If their marketing campaign falls down around your excellent conversion work, then it doesn't matter how good it converts if nobody goes to it. So you can't guarantee sales leads. What you can guarantee, say in that instance, is that you'll have a high converting page, right? You would do A/B testing to continue to refine it over time, but you can't necessarily guarantee that they're going to get more sales leads. That's something out of your control, unless you're going to go around people's houses and make them type in their email.
Which can then bring it into a recurring contract, of course, if you're going to be there to help continue to improve those. Because I think so many times, especially in the creative industry, and I know obviously we have a lot of people sort of who follow news here in the creative industries. A lot of times people will approach us and ask for a website or ask for an application, whatever it might be, and they come with their own reasons, because it looks outdated, or because our competitor has got a great new site and we need to keep up with the Joneses. So they don't actually have any measurable goals outside of that.
Nope. That's what I do with a lot of things at first, is like, one of the words I hate, this would be a neat feature. I usually tell clients I don't do neat features. In fact, I refuse neat projects. And they say, why? Well, neat, that's not a reason. You don't do something because it's neat, right? Like, that's a bad business idea. So even with like our competitor has a brand new site. Okay, well, did you lose any sales? Like from your online store maybe? Well, no. So what does it matter if your competitor has a new site? Are you actually like, is there something we can improve? Now, maybe you are losing sales because their new site is responsive and like someone can check out easily with that. Okay, well, that's a reason to do it. But again, they come to you with a new site. And if you haven't dug back at the beginning, then you may not get that, those deeper reasons why.
And do you think finding out what those measurable goals are on us, or should they be coming from the client?
No, they're from us. The client might have a guess at it, but as a consultant, well, that's not true. If you want to be like a good consultant and charge well for it, it's absolutely your responsibility. If you just want to be told what to do, then no, don't worry about it, right? You're going to be able to charge less because you're not thinking strategically with the client. You're thinking tactically with the person that moves the mail around.
Sure, because they might be losing sales, but they're supposing that it's because their competitor has this great new site, but there may be many contributing factors to the reason for them losing sales.
Yep. And that's something I've done with a few clients who said, our competitor has a new site. I'm like, well, are you tracking your conversions? No. It's like, okay, well, I'm not doing anything until we're starting to track conversions. Once we start doing that, then we can look at a proposal for the real project. That is the first step.
Yeah, I think one of the
and I've had a few clients balk at that. They don't, well, I want you to do everything first. I'm like, no, we can't do that. We don't even know if there's a problem yet or where the problem is, right? This is the diagnosis part, the analysis up front, which is of very high value.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is, as you say, is pushing back, because so often clients just want to charge ahead. And I think some of the finest consultants I know are the ones who push back and say, well, why do you want to do that? Have you thought about this? This is going to cost you X amount of money when you haven't even done this. It's continually pushing back, and it's continually sort of challenging their ideas of what they should be doing.
Yeah. And they'll even have ideas of what it is to do well, right? I'm just talking with one of my very few local clients. Most of my clients are all over the world, but one client in town, and they have a really complex site to build, really complex e-commerce site that shoots off to many different facets of the web to sell their product through suppliers. And I like even getting a discovery project. I'm like, unless we do the discovery project, we don't even have an idea of whether like how much anything is going to cost or whether it's worthwhile to you. And they are balking at that point because they've worked with other developers who have failed. Actually, they're sitting on a totally failed site right now, but it's money that they invested. And they said, well, the other guy didn't do that. And they actually said that today. The other guy didn't do that. And I said, yeah, but you notice it doesn't work now. So it doesn't work, and you've been emailing him for months, for a year actually, and he's not even replying to your emails anymore, and you don't have control of the site because he's got it all on his server. So yeah, you could do that again if you want, by all means, but not with me.
Okay, cool. So so getting that information from the client is on us. It's difficult because, as we've said, a lot of times it can be scary because we don't want to push back. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to ask for the budget. We don't want to make them wait for a proposal. We don't want to set goals because we might fail in them. Basically, we can already see a theme to this, and it's just fear of losing a potential client.
And being afraid of upping your game as a consultant too, right? Will I actually succeed at upping my game as a consultant, committing to measurable goals?
Yeah, I think it's the technician mentality. Because I think a lot of consultants, when they start out, they do start out as technicians, because my skill is this and I can do that. But moving past that can take a long time. And it was one of my biggest hangups for many years, I think, actually believing that you could help the business move forward rather than just designing a website or, sort of whatever your specialty might be. And I think a lot of that is fear-based.
Absolutely. But I found the more I've done that, like dove into that, the slower I've got at putting out proposals and the higher my rates have gotten. And like rates instantly taken. There's one where I offered options on a proposal recently, and I spent 60 minutes yesterday building $4,000 worth of features for a client. I noticed that there'll be a new update to the some of the core plugin or the core stuff. So I have to do another 60 minutes to do it. So that still is $2,000 an hour, right? Because we spent time investigating the strategic stuff behind their business. And then I estimated on that, and he said, we didn't even think of this feature. That's a great one. I'd love to do that. And that was actually above his budget.
There you go.
As my third option.
I think we can come back to that in a little bit as well when we talk about pricing, especially. So another area we see, another people sort of reach out to us on a pretty regular basis. People tend to think that they need to be sort of Shakespeare or a Wordsworth when it comes to writing proposals, whereas in actual fact, I think it's completely the opposite. A proposal needs to be incredibly clear. The language needs to be completely understandable, even language that I think the client uses and has used in conversations, with you. Why do you think we have this need to be clever in our proposals?
Because it makes us sound smart, makes us sound clever, and we think it impresses the client. I think most people feel they need to impress the client because they haven't done the work up front to build the client's trust, right? I mean, my friend who's a physiotherapist, when I go see him, I've known him for years, and he says, hey, you need to do this. He doesn't flower it all up and explain everything to me. He says it, and I trust him, so I do what he says, right? But if you haven't spent time to build that trust with your client, then you are continuing to justify why you're actually worthwhile at your job. If you haven't built that trust, which is why you add in, oh, our company's been doing this for 52 years and whatever, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think to overhammer to overuse the Einstein quote, is it something like, if you can't explain it in simple terms, then you don't understand it well enough yourself, or something along those lines.
Yeah. You can't explain it. It's like, I have a 5-year-old, and if I can't explain it to her, it's possibly something I don't understand as well as I think I do.
Yeah. And I think that it sort of relates into rushing into the proposal as well, because you're so keen to get that out the door, or so scared about not getting out the door, that you will write the proposal without having enough information, without having that detail. And because you don't know the problem well enough, that's when I think we tend to inject all of that sort of fancy language, because, like you say, we don't understand.
Yep, exactly right. Understanding and taking that time and slowing down is key. I think even clients, when they say they want to rush, they just want to know when they're going to get it. So when I say, I'm sorry, I can't do it till next week on Friday, they, like, all the clients now say, oh, okay. And now part of that is also because I've spent almost 10 years doing my business now, and 10 years establishing my credibility. And so when they come to me, it's a recommendation, often from 2 or 3 other people. And so they've already been built trust up that way, because they've gone to 2 other firms, and both firms said, oh, you should talk to Curtis about this. So they're willing to wait for the expert, for the sole source provider. Yeah,
as opposed to putting feelers out to 10 different consultants and seeing which comes in with the cheapest price.
Yeah, and when I get an RFP, I'm actually working for a client now who started off with an RFP, and I said, hey, I don't do RFPs because I didn't help write it, so I'm not the preferred contractor, and I don't waste my time on that. Good luck with the project. That's about the email I sent him, and he wrote back and said, okay, well, this is my first time doing a web project. You didn't help write this, but nobody did. This is just what I thought you did. People did. So I offered, I said, okay, I'll take a 10-minute look through it. And I looked through it and came back and said, your first 3 ideas are dumb. Here's why. And he said, oh, but someone sent me a quote on this, and it was like high 6 figures. And I was like, well, that's because you want them to do these 3 ideas, and they're epically hard, but they're dumb. If you cut all 3 of those, which are going to be of no benefit to your business, then you don't need that. And we're working on a very healthy upper 5-figure project together, which I took from an RFP. And lots of them never get back to you when you say that, but I just don't waste my time on RFPs.
Sure. But and again, that the benefit for you and the benefit for the client has come down to pushing back on the information, because otherwise he would have gone with that, or had to have gone with that 6-figure quote.
And he wouldn't have known. Like he had no basis with which to evaluate that stuff, right? And someone else looked at it and said, yeah, sure, we can charge some money for this. That's great. So, sure. But it would have taken, now looking at his business, it'll pay off this new project generally within a year, I would guess, if we return 1 to 3. So possibly 1 to 10 on the high end, right? So for every $100 I charge, he's going to make 1,000. Or 1 to 3 would be 100. I charge 300 for him. But the other one, it would have been years till he dug himself out of that hole. He said he was going to take out a business like a loan for it, as opposed to just pay for it.
Well, lucky for him, he found you then.
Yeah, really. Lucky for him, I said, sure, I'll take a look at it after. And it was a fairly short RFP. If it had been 32 pages, I would have said no. It was 5 pages. So I said, sure, I'll glance through it.
So one of the things I always talk about, and I think we've spoken about it briefly as well, is actually, and ask for permission, obviously, before doing this, but I always record all my calls with potential clients when we're talking through their needs. I always go through Skype, so I just hit Skype automatically records on Skype call recorder. Obviously, it's fantastic to be able to go back through those interviews, to go through those conversations, and actually pull out the language that they're using, and sort of reflect that back. And then you don't have to go looking. You don't have to go looking for those big fancy words then, because you can try and relate as they have related to you, their issues, their problems, and hopefully the solutions you can provide. So, I mean, do you do that as well, don't you, right?
I do record all my calls. Well, I suppose I forget once or twice, but I generally try to record all my calls. And yeah, using the language the client uses. Another big thing you need to do is if they are using acronyms or something, then it is likely, if you're sitting at a board table and there's someone uses an acronym, it's likely someone else has no idea what it is, but they've been there long enough that they can't ask the question without looking stupid.
Right.
So I end up saying, I don't know what that means. I'm not sure what this means either. Please explain it to me. And I will drive until we get the answer on that and say, okay, let's move on some term that everyone else understands in theory. But I know after meetings, I've had people been like, oh, thanks. I totally forgot what that was. Like internal staff that didn't know. Yeah.
Sure. Cool. All right. So the final number 5 in the biggest mistakes, and another potential proposal killer, is not tying value to your pricing, to what you're going to essentially be providing. And if you fail to do this, if a client can't see any value in what you're sort of quoting in your proposal, then you might as well not bother. So, I mean, how can we avoid making this mistake? How can we, what can we do to get our pricing on game?
Well, and you have to ask them, right, what their issues are, and dive into the value. It is a fairly typical number to see a 20 to 30% increase in sales when someone adds an online store to their brick and mortar business is a general number. So that's something we could start out with to come up with a value for their project, right? Now, if they're only selling $100 a month or something, then, that's still, they'd have to invest into it. But you may find there's other things like, automating something in their business allows them to, divert the time of a staff member off to sales instead. Okay, well, that's saving time of that staff member, so that's some value. Allowing them to do sales is a second level value, right? With those extra sales, they can buy in bulk, maybe, right? They can purchase something in bulk and again have a third level of value. Most people stop at that first level of value, though. More sales, right? In an online store, they don't go into what would more sales let you do? It would let you, push some other project that you haven't been able to do because you didn't have the funds before, or like I said, buy in bulk or other stuff like that. And you can only get that by diving in with the client and spending time talking to them about the project.
Yeah, I mean, it would be absolutely impossible to go past that first level if all you heard was we need a new online store. Sure, that's going to cost you X $1,000. You can't go past that without any more information.
Nope. It's like you can't build a house, right? Someone says, I need a house. Well, okay, well, that's good. I can't tell you how much it is until we figure out all the rest of how many rooms does it need? What are you going to use these things for, right?
Yeah, and I think, like you say, you can tie so much more value to that project, and I think this as well. This ties in. You mentioned before sending pricing options. We're a big fan, or I'm certainly a big fan of pricing options, where you can say, okay, well, we've discussed your budget, and for the budget, we can build you what is a very basic house. It's going to get the job done. Mm-hmm. Then you have those added sort of areas. Well, if we do launch the online store where your sales team is going to be freed up, you're going to be able to pull in more leads, you're going to be able to generate more revenue per salesperson, and you're going to be able to add those on, surely, right? As sort of, I don't know how you look at it, as maybe extras, or could you put an additional sort of package on their pricing package, or?
Yeah, so I try to shoot for 3 packages generally. Big thing to remember is that your base package needs to be the project that they need. So if I was, say, offering an online store and the base package didn't include a store, it just built the site, that is not a valid first option. That is fooling yourself into thinking you have 3 options. So, the first level would be the site and the store. The second level would be site and store and A/B testing for a certain amount of time, maybe, or site, store, and something else, right?
So we're talking upsales, basically, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the good old-fashioned
more value, right? So you want to find, say the one that I did recently that was $4,000 for 60 minutes so far of work, and I'll need about another 60 to finish it off. The big problem with this guy's site was automation. He had to manually enter so much data, like the HTML code, all the time. We identified that as a problem, and so the first option was to fix it. The second option was to add some features he had kind of dreamed of, and then as I was thinking about a third option, I said, well, for every time he adds a new chunk of his site, he has to redo the membership stuff. But I can automate all that with a checkbox. And so the third option was, hey, I can automate this with the checkbox, basically. He checks it. It creates a whole bunch of membership features for him, checks it all off, sets it up for the categories for his site, and he's done. So he just has to check a box. And when I sent that off to him, he said, hey, we didn't even talk about number 3, right? No, but your problem is all this manual work. So I thought, as we add this to your site, you will have manual work again. We'll cut out some, but we'd add other stuff. And I just thought that this might be something you'd be interested in. And he said, absolutely. And 15 minutes later, I have payment.
Excellent. And all down to investigating the project, essentially.
And putting some thought into writing the estimate as well, right? Like, what was the root problem? The root problem was automation. That was
exactly.
He wanted a new site. He wanted some membership features, but the root problem with his current site was automation. He had to do so much of it manually, and now he doesn't.
But was that the problem he initially came to you for?
Yes. Yep. It was a new site, and he's in toy collecting. It's in the vein of toy collecting, and all his old sites, he has to copy HTML all over the place to link products back and forth. And so the new one, we're making sure he doesn't have to do that. And we just made sure he doesn't have to do other manual work as well, which amounted to clicking around the screens for him. So it wouldn't have been that long, but as I felt along about it, I felt that the intangible benefit of that, so something like you can't put a dollar value on it necessarily, but him looking at it and going, I don't have to do that, sweet, was of high value to him. And he agreed with me by giving me money to agree with me.
Sure, and I think it's easier to associate the value with the price when you use that optional pricing. When you say, well, here's the sort of the basic package, should we say, and here are with the sort of some additionals that are going to help your business even more, or are going to allow you to grow even more, or going to allow you to make even more money, or whatever, as opposed to the traditional, should we say, proposal with the line item. Line item 1, X dollars, line item 2, X dollars. And it's very hard to associate value to a list of items.
Well, the other thing options does is, so if I am estimating against 3 other contractors that do single price quotes, I now have 50% of the decision power because I have 3 options. So 50% of the options are saying yes to Curtis, and 50% of them are saying yes to somebody else, right? Each of the other people only has a small sliver of the yes in there. It changes that decision from will I work with Curtis to which option provides the most value to me with him.
Exactly. And the other competitor is saying work with me for X or don't work with me at all.
Yes. Yeah. And I've even had some where they come back and like, well, I like option 1 or I like option 2 and I like option 3, but it's a little high. So is there something we can come in between there where we take some of the stuff out of option 3? And we say, sure. They've already said yes to me. They're saying right there, I would like to work with you. We just need to tailor it a little bit more, right? And so maybe the second proposal they get really only has 1 option because we sat down, priced it out together, and we figured out what was good value on both sides.
I love that.
So
I love.
They don't have to say yes immediately by saying, by putting $1 down for it, but you say yes by just wanting to engage with you deeper on it.
I think actually is one of the smartest things you can do. I think it really is when it comes to sort of upping your game, should we say, that being able to offer those options, and you don't stop competing with your competitors, but like you say, the ball is in your court a lot longer than it is in theirs. There are just a series of options. You don't like this one? Well, maybe this one will work, or maybe this one will work. I think it's one of the biggest sort of game changers you can do for your proposals.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
absolutely.
I think we pretty much covered those 5 points there. So I don't know. Before we jump into any questions, if we've got any questions here, I just want to talk briefly about the offer that we've put together with Curtis. As I mentioned before, Curtis has written writing proposals that win work, and he's very kindly given us 10 copies to give away. So what I'm going to do is, as soon as we finish this webinar, I'm going to send out an email, and the first 10 people who get back to me from that email will be lucky enough to get a copy of that. So that's going to be awesome. So you're going to have to be really quick there. And also, to add a little something to that as well, we're going to give away a special discount, 50% off the first 6 months on any new C plan. Again, we'll send that out with an email afterwards, and that will be available for the next 24 hours. So, yep. And if you're not one of the first 10 people to respond, you can always head over to Curtis's website, which is curtismchale.ca. I'll leave that in the email as well. And you can, of course, purchase a copy there. So, okay, so I don't know. Let's have a look, see if we do have any questions. There's a bit of a delay going on here in the, I think it's about 20, 30 seconds. So what's it? Guest 4592, an actual proposal with client name redacted would be a huge help. Okay.
There's 3 of those in the book, which, as I said in the chat room, there are 3 of those in the book where I have taken the exact proposal and just changed names. I think the one I used for the toy collecting client that we've talked about a little bit, I'm pretty sure that one is right in there as well.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, well, okay, excellent. Well, there you go. There's that already. And somebody actually wrote in with an email, earlier, and it was with regards to the budget question. And I think we probably almost sort of answered it already, but what should we be doing for those clients that do actually push back on the budget and who just aren't sort of comfortable giving out a figure?
At some point you have to say, sorry, if we don't get it, I can't help you. I'm going to bring up the paragraph that I put in my email. I'm just looking it up. Email 1. There it is. So my last question is, or one of my last questions is, what's your budget? And right after that, I put, budget is usually the hardest question here. That's something that I need to at least have an idea on. Do you have $1,000 and I need to find existing solutions that can be glued in quotes together or meet your goals? And you'll probably have to give up on some of the specifics of how it works. Or do you have $30,000 or more to spend and we can build whatever you want to meet your exact goals? Okay. And when I added that kind of explanation paragraph, I almost never get like, I don't know back. They come up with some number, great. They go through that internal process of ranges themselves. And they, and they come back with something.
Yeah, I think it gets to that point, isn't it, where it can be tricky. It can be like pulling teeth, but I think the more direct you are and the sooner you learn to just bite the bullet and ask directly, the easier it
and being willing
gets.
to walk away too, right?
Entirely.
Like, out of all the contacts I get, I probably only send proposals to 15% of the people that contact me. Some of them I look at the project and like, that's the best project for my friend Daniel or for my friend Justin. You should go talk to them, and I'll just send it off right away. Some of them, we get through further on and they just don't seem like a good client or the right client, and so I just don't send it. But so by the time I actually send a proposal, I land, I don't know, over 90% of them. So the only one I can remember losing recently is because I was a dork and didn't ask about budget. Totally my fault. This was a referral from a friend who had referred many other people with a good budget, and I just assumed they had a healthy budget, but they did not on this. And they said, hey, there's no way I can spend that. That's like 8 times what the site makes in a year. I wrote back, said, hey, that'd be dumb. I probably should ask that up front. It was totally my fault. So
yeah, and like I said before, it's an easy mistake to make. It really is. But if you don't ask, you're asking for trouble.
Yep, absolutely. It was just before Christmas. I wasted my time on it. It's totally my fault.
Okay, so Nadia asks, do you approach proposals differently for projects versus retainer clients?
I do. Retainer is access, right? So it's access to you generally. Being a developer, sometimes they want me to, I even had people, we want you to be around on weekends if the site has problems. And I actually charge like huge for that, because I don't want to be around on weekends. I want to be up in the mountains without a cell phone that works because I'm so far away from anything with my kids in the snow or something. So I charge a lot for those. And they're asking for access for you to, or insurance basically for you to bail them out of something, right? If they have a problem, you're there already. You do not sell retainer clients on hours. I don't do that at all, because that is not, and that takes you back to the tactical person, right?
So how do you sell your retainers then if you don't work on hours?
If I don't work on hours, it depends. If they want me to be around to solve problems and just to fix them no matter what they are, then it's really expensive, right? Because that means I'm taking all the risk there. I could have a problem that takes me 2 weeks to figure out and I have to take the risk for that. So I may charge $20,000 a month for it. If they say, well, we want you around to be, to be able to give us a quote quickly. So I would drop a project and give them a quote on it. And then they would pay extra on top of that, right? Okay. That's how I do it with my stuff. For the people I do business coaching with, if they want to be able to, have me answer my phone any time of the day, then that's more, right? If they want just, 1 call a week, then, I charge for 1 call a week. If they want me to be accessible via email all the time, then again, that's extra on top.
Okay, because Nadia's clarified here. She said, trying to see the best way about converting some current clients that have already worked with her 2 or 3 times, how to convert those into a retainer format.
Mm-hmm.
You going to advise that?
So that's similar to productized consulting. If you look around for posts on that, I think Brian Cassell has a whole book on productized consulting. And that's how you do it. So you're selling a product to them, right? So you say for, I'll give you, maybe it's a day a week. I don't know. It feels harder to me like that. I know I have a friend who does A/B testing, and he says, I'll run 2 A/B tests for you every month for your monthly fee. And he fills up that way. But I would recommend Brian Cassell has written a bunch about product consulting, and it's CASEL, I believe. And
I think
Brian is BRI
as well, isn't he? I think productized, I think, is the course.
Yeah, I'd have to look. It's been a little while since I've looked at all of his stuff, but if you look up his site, Brian Cassell, then he'll have stuff on that. He definitely has a book on it for sure.
But does the
stuff?
Sorry, what were you saying?
Go.
Does the nature of the proposal change though? Because if you've already worked with a client a couple of times, you already have a relationship there, you know them a little bit better. Would you say that?
Well, you should have trust with them, right? You should already have the trust with them. So you can talk about the budgets and how much it's going to cost and what value they're going to get out of it. So maybe you say, and if you're doing design work and they launch a new marketing site every month, say, yeah, I can do the design for 1 marketing site a month. Right? It's not necessarily hours, because that's not what's important. The important part is the value or the product they get out the other end.
Sure. I think it's the hardest thing about productized services, isn't it? Is actually defining that product.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's easier, say with coaching, it's reasonably easy for me to say, you can access me via Slack. I'll respond within 24 hours. And we'll have 1 call per week with the group, right? For the mentoring group I do. If you want me one-on-one, then it's more, because it's, one-on-one. That's the most valuable way to get my time, is, again, just like you and I talking, that would be what I charge the most for, because it's one-on-one and targeted at you. And, if you say, well, I want to be able to call you when I have a question too, I can say, okay, well, you want to be able to call me during business hours? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fine. But you want to be able to call me at night. So you're saying when my phone rings and I'm putting my kids to bed, I'm supposed to stop. So that's, astronomically more, because it's of high value to me.
Okay. So now it says she does have trust. It's just loves the idea of coming up with 3 options for them. Yeah. So I think it sounds like you need to define what those end sort of products might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Define 3 options for the retainer, and do your best to stay away from hours, because that's the least valuable way to sell your time, right? If I told the client, for $4,000 for 60 minutes worth of work, they'd go, what? That's crazy. When they say $4,000 of value, so I don't have to do all this work. Oh, totally. I'll do that. Not questions asked.
Entirely.
Right.
Exactly.
But if we inverted it and said for the hour or 2 hours it'll take me to finish it off, they would say, no way, that's crazy. And I wouldn't blame them, because it would feel crazy, but $4,000 for the value they got out of that, for all the work they don't have to do, totally worth it.
Yeah, totally. So definitely check out Brian Cassell's stuff there, Nadia, because he goes really deep into that. All right. So, and I can't see any more questions in there, but I got another one that came in as well, and I think this is the last one. Then is regarding length of proposals. How long should a proposal be? How long is a piece of string? Because we've, I've seen proposals, and I know people who are writing 50, 60, 70 page proposals. What are your thoughts on that, Curtis?
You write them 50, 60, 70 pages because you didn't spend time building trust, and you spend a whole bunch of time building trust in the proposal. A proposal, when you think proposal, think sales letter, right? What's my problem? What's the client's problem? Tell them about the future. Tell them how you're going to measure that, to give them the options, give them the timeline options, or the timelines that go with the option, and then tell them what everyone's responsible for, right? The client needs to buy the tools, say the software tool that you need to finish it off or whatever. That's it. 6 sections. That's all you need. 2 to 3 pages. If it's more than that, you probably didn't spend the time building the trust up front. I actually work on mine collaboratively with the client, at least the first 2-3 sections. So the problem, we work on it together in a Google Doc. The problem, the brighter future, and the objectives, we work on those all 3 together. The only thing I don't work on with them is the options and the timelines, because they're tied to the options. But they even see the accountabilities right up front.
Okay.
So I've had clients like,
So you say your proposals are about 6 sections long?
Yep, exactly 6 sections. They'll be in my book.
Well, that's good, because that fits in with our one of the in Nusi we see that proposals that are between 5 and 8 sections long are accepted 80% of the time. They account for 80% of the accepted proposals through Nusi, between 5 and 8 sections. I couldn't agree more.
All you need. The biggest thing I fight with my clients is when they are helping me with it and they put the objectives in and they put in like 77 tasks that they want in, and that's not a job of a proposal. If they really want to list that out, I just create a second document and let them do it, and I don't really look at it. I look at it a bit to glance through it, make sure there's nothing crazy in there, but the proposal is a separate document. So we may say, if I'm installing an online store, I'll say, we're installing WooCommerce or whatever online store you're using. We are making sure we can convert. We're making sure this is hooked up to your email marketing system, and we're making sure your employees can do option A easily. That's it. That's all the objectives are, right?
Yeah.
They don't need to be more than that.
Completely. And I think a lot of people do fall into that mistake of listing out those 77 options.
And it's just a way of making you feel like you did the work up front to get the trust, right? You're getting the trust. You're getting the trust there by listing it all out. So they say, oh yeah, they do know what I'm talking about because you didn't spend the time previously doing it. I actually found doing it, working on it collaboratively, because like in a Google Doc, you'll take notes on the side, we'll ask questions, we'll do a whole bunch of stuff. They'll add stuff, we'll delete stuff. Works well. And so I do the first draft of the first 3 sections, and then the last one, the accountability is one. And then I send it off to them and we work on it together. So that's all I'm guaranteeing when I say I'm going to send them a proposal, is that they get that document we could both work on together. And then it takes as long as it takes that we're both happy with it. And then I actually send them the actual pricing after that. I add the options in, I attach it and send off the actual.
That's interesting. I hadn't actually, I'd never actually worked collaboratively on the beginnings of a proposal with clients myself.
And I find that really helps me find their fears as well. So maybe I only have the 3 or 4 high points of the project, and they go, oh, well, we need more than this. And we can, well, why do we need more than this? Well, we had 2 projects fail before. Oh, okay. Well, if you've had a string of failed projects as a client, it seems to me that most often there's a problem with the client then. So it's good knowledge for me to have and to make sure I address that. Or, they have some other concern that is a fear they have, and by addressing it up front, you deal with their concerns. So even one of my accountabilities is we agree to do what's in the best interest of the user. And so when a client says, oh, I want this random thing that looks really crazy, and I'm like, why would you ever do that? Nobody would want to see that on a site. They say, but I like it. I hate it when people do it the other way. And I say, okay, well, here's the research that says no one else does. And ultimately, the people that pay me are your clients. So let's do what the clients say. And most of the time they're like, oh yeah, you're right, you did say that, and I did agree to it. I did ask you about that. So yep, okay, we'll do it your way and we'll try it, right? At worst, I'll say, let's try it. Try it my way. If we're not happy with it, if it's not, doing well for your site, then we can try it your way and we'll test it and see which one works better. Cool.
Well, I don't think we've got any more questions there. So I think we're probably at the end. So thank you very much, Curtis, for taking the time out of your day to join us today and talk about proposals. And
you're most welcome. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you very much. So everyone, make sure that you drop by Curtis's website. It's curtismchale.ca. That's right, yeah?
Yep.
And you're on Twitter as well?
I am Curtis McHale everywhere, all lowercase.
You're lucky man. You managed to get your real name everywhere, as opposed to having to add letters and hyphens and.
Well, it's not quite a normal name either, right? So
McHale, yeah.
At worst, I capitalize it the way it's supposed to be capitalized, capital M, capital H, and then it's still me. So
fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your days as well to come and listen to us. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope to see you all again soon. Okay, good luck then, guys. Bye-bye.